Corey, hands where I can see them.
Okay, they're up. What is going
The
on?
homes you've been going back to after your installs and burglarizing with the override code you kept. 11 houses, $340,000.
11 homes. No triggered alarm. No forced entry. Corey Breslin didn't need to break in. He still had the key he'd never given back.
That wasn't me. Other technicians have access to override credentials. Anyone who did a service call on those systems could.
He would not get the chance to clear one more manufacturer access log before Colorado Bureau of Investigation analysts pulled it themselves. Within days, investigators would confirm 11 burglaries across 22 months, every single one committed without a single triggered alarm or any sign of forced entry, because the alarm system itself had been disarmed by the same code he had personally programmed into each home during a friendly, welcomed visit 8 to 14 months earlier. $340,000 in jewelry, firearms, and electronics disappeared from homes that were, according to every homeowner's own recollection, fully armed and secure. 19 more properties showed the exact same tampered code sitting dormant, waiting, never yet used. A stolen wedding ring sitting in a storage unit, rented under a fake name, would end up telling investigators more than any alarm log ever could. What began as one manually reset override credential would end with a Colorado jury hearing exactly how a company's most trusted installer had spent 2 years quietly holding the keys to homes he'd already left. Watch what happens when he tries to argue the evidence itself is unreliable. It does not go the way he thinks it's going to go. Stick around for it, and subscribe if you want more of these. Corey Nathaniel Breslin was born in 1990 in Aurora, Colorado, the older of 2 brothers. His father worked as a locksmith for a small independent shop in Aurora for over 20 years, and his mother worked the sales floor at a big box electronics store, a combination that meant Corey grew up around both halves of what would eventually become his own career: hardware that kept people out, and electronics that told people what was happening inside their own homes. He spent much of his adolescence in his father's shop, learning to rekey locks and cut duplicate keys by the time he was 14, and by high school he had developed a genuine fascination with the electronic side of security, wiring up his own bedroom with a homemade alarm circuit he'd built from a kit ordered online, more out of curiosity than any real need. His father used to joke that Corey understood how to get into things almost as well as he understood how to keep people out of them, a line that years later investigators would find uncomfortably prophetic. He graduated from Aurora Central High School in 2008 and enrolled in a 2-year electronics technology program at a community college outside Denver, paying his own way with part-time work installing car stereos and home theater systems for a local AV company. In 2016, at 26 years old, Breslin was hired as an installation technician at Sentry Guard Home Security, a regional company that had built its reputation across the Denver metro area on personalized, high-touch service, sending the same familiar technician back for follow-up visits and system upgrades, rather than rotating through an anonymous pool of installers. Corey's background in both traditional locksmithing and modern smart home electronics made him an unusually strong fit for the job from the start, and within 2 years he was being specifically requested by name for the company's more complex installations, homes with layered smart lock, camera, and alarm integration that a less technically fluent installer might have struggled with. By 2018, he had been promoted to senior installation technician, one of a small handful of employees the company trusted with programming the manufacturer's master override code, a credential intended strictly for warranty service calls and system resets, capable of disarming any system it was configured on, regardless of what the homeowner's own personal code had been changed to since installation. Company policy required that override code be randomly generated and system-specific for every single installation, a safeguard designed specifically to prevent exactly the kind of retained backdoor access Breslin would eventually build for himself. Homeowners loved him. Customer satisfaction surveys from 2019 and 2020 repeatedly singled him out by name, praising his patience walking elderly clients through unfamiliar smartphone apps. His habit of following up personally after an installation to make sure everything was working the way a family expected. He was, by every metric SentryGuard tracked, the exact kind of technician a homeowner was relieved to have standing in their kitchen for 2 to 4 hours while they stepped out to run errands and left him alone with full access to their home. His personal life told a different story starting around 2020. Breslin had developed a sports betting habit that began casually during the pandemic and escalated steadily over the following 2 years, accumulating debt he kept carefully hidden from his girlfriend and for a long time from himself. By early 2022, he owed a combination of online sportsbooks and a private lender roughly $38,000, a figure that, on a senior installer's salary, he had no realistic way of clearing through legitimate means. Therefore, in the spring of 2022, sitting in a customer's living room finishing a routine system installation exactly as he had done hundreds of times before, Corey Breslin typed a manufacturer override code into the system's configuration panel that he had chosen to memorize rather than let the system randomly generate and forget, a small technical decision nobody in that home would ever notice. That would quietly reopen the door to their house for as long as he wanted it open. SentryGuard's business model, like much of the residential home security industry, depended on a deep degree of unsupervised, in-home trust. A typical installation required a technician to work alone inside a customer's home for 2 to 4 hours, mounting sensors, running wiring, and configuring the system's software, often with the homeowner present for only a portion of that window before stepping out to handle other errands, confident the technician in their home was there specifically because the company had vetted him. The manufacturer override code sat at the center of that trust, intended purely as an emergency access mechanism for warranty repairs, or a homeowner locked out of their own system. It functioned, by design, as a true backdoor, capable of disarming the alarm and unlocking connected smart locks, regardless of whatever personal code the homeowner had since set for daily use. Company policy required this code be randomly generated and unique to each individual system, precisely because a fixed, memorized, reusable code would defeat the entire purpose of the safeguard, turning a single point of emergency access into a permanent, universal key held by whichever technician happened to program it. SentryGuard's internal work order system, the primary record homeowners and company management relied on to confirm installation compliance, logged whatever an installer entered into it, with no independent verification against the actual code programmed into a customer's physical system. That gap, functionally invisible during years of normal operation, meant a technician willing to falsify his own paperwork could report full compliance with the randomization policy while quietly doing the opposite. Compounding the vulnerability further, the system's installer access notification feature, designed to alert a homeowner via mobile app anytime the override credential was used on their system, could itself be disabled during initial configuration, a setting intended for legitimate edge cases like a homeowner who found the notifications a nuisance during a lengthy warranty repair process, but one that, in the wrong hands, silenced the exact alarm that should have caught a technician returning to a home he had no further business being inside. That system, built on the reasonable premise that a company's own vetting and a technician's professional license carried sufficient weight on their own, worked exactly as intended for 6 years of Breslin's employment. It also meant that once he decided to start retaining backdoor access, the 2 safeguards specifically designed to catch that behavior, randomized codes and homeowner notifications, were both entirely within his own technical control to quietly defeat. The first documented instance of Breslin retaining a fixed override code traced back to that spring 2022 installation, a home belonging to a family who had, during the appointment itself, mentioned an upcoming international vacation to Breslin directly. The kind of friendly small talk homeowners routinely made with a technician they trusted enough to leave alone in their house. Breslin logged the installation in SentryGuard's work order system as compliant with the randomization policy, disabled the installer access notification feature under the guise of a standard configuration step, and did nothing further with the access for months. He waited. Investigators would later determine Breslin deliberately let between 8 and 14 months pass after each install before returning to a property. A delay calculated specifically to put distance between his own visible presence in a home's service history and any eventual burglary, making the connection between installer and theft considerably less obvious to a homeowner or a detective working the case cold. He kept a mental map, according to his own later statements, rather than any written record of which properties he had planted the tampered code in, a decision that, ironically, made his own recall inconsistent enough during questioning that investigators initially worried the true scope might be larger than what the physical evidence could ultimately confirm. Over the following 2 years, Breslin identified additional targets during routine installations across Arapahoe and Douglas counties, selecting homes based on visible indicators of wealth he noted during the appointment itself. Luxury vehicles parked in the garage, expensive jewelry left visible on a dresser during a bedroom sensor installation, homeowner comments about travel plans or a second property. For each selected home, he repeated the same pattern, a fixed rather than randomized override code, a falsified work order claiming compliance, and a disabled notification feature, then simply waited. He monitored several victims' social media accounts in the months following installation, timing his eventual entries to periods when a homeowner had posted vacation content confirming they were actively out of town, or relying on travel plans he had learned directly during the original friendly installation visit. On the night of each burglary, he used the retained override code to disarm the system and unlock connected smart locks either remotely or in person, entering a home that, to any observer, appeared to still be fully armed and secure, since the system's own logs showed a legitimate override credential use rather than any triggered alarm or forced entry at all. He stored the stolen property in a storage unit he had rented under a false name in a suburb removed from both his own residence and the majority of the affected properties, a precaution that kept the physical evidence separated from anything that could be directly traced back to him through ordinary means, at least until investigators eventually connected the unit to him through other evidence entirely. By March 2024, the pattern had produced 11 confirmed burglaries across 22 months, with a combined stolen property value of roughly $340,000 in jewelry, firearms, and electronics. A subsequent forensic review of SentryGuard's full installation history under Breslin identified 19 additional properties carrying the identical tampered override code signature. Installations where the same fixed code pattern had been planted, but where, as far as investigators could determine, no burglary had yet followed, suggesting Breslin may have been holding a considerably larger inventory of accessible homes than he had gotten around to actually burglarizing. In March 2024, a homeowner returning from a 2-week trip abroad discovered jewelry and a firearm safe missing from a bedroom closet, despite recalling with confidence that she had armed the system before leaving and finding, upon return, no triggered alarm history, and no sign of forced entry anywhere on the property. She reported the burglary to Aurora police, who initially treated it as a standalone case with an unusual absence of forced entry evidence. Denver area burglary detectives, reviewing the case alongside 2 similar unsolved reports from the same general area over the prior year, both also involving no triggered alarm and no forced entry despite a fully armed system, noticed all 3 victims had used the same home security company for their alarm installation. A subpoena of SentryGuard's service records confirmed all 3 systems had been installed by the same technician, Corey Breslin. The Colorado Bureau of Investigation's Cybercrime and Electronic Crimes Unit joined the case once the alarm bypass mechanism made clear the burglaries involved a technical vulnerability rather than conventional forced entry, initiating a forensic audit of the manufacturer's own access logs, records maintained independently on the manufacturer's servers, rather than through SentryGuard's own internal, and therefore falsifiable, work order system. That manufacturer-side audit proved decisive. The log showed the override credential had been used to disarm each victim's system during the exact window burglary detectives had already established for each theft, and the disarm event itself traced to a mobile signal that investigators matched to a phone registered in Breslin's own name. A review of SentryGuard's internal work order system showed Breslin had logged randomized override code per policy on all 11 affected installations, a claim directly contradicted by the manufacturer's own records showing a fixed, reused code had actually been programmed into each system. Evidence that removed any possibility the pattern reflected an innocent technical oversight rather than deliberate, repeated falsification. Investigators recovered text messages from Breslin's personal phone referencing 2 of the affected properties by street name and specifically describing one homeowner's upcoming 2-week Cabo trip. Details he could only have learned during the original customer-facing installation visit, establishing a direct link between his legitimate access to a home and his later criminal use of information gathered during that visit. A search of a storage unit rented under a false name in a nearby suburb, traced back to Breslin through a security deposit paid from an account in his name, recovered several items later positively identified by victims, including a distinctive engraved wedding ring reported stolen during the March 2024 burglary that had first drawn detectives' attention to the pattern. Investigators found the unit organized methodically, with items grouped by the property they had been taken from, an organizational habit that echoed the same careful, technically minded approach he brought to his legitimate installation work. The smoking gun was the manufacturer's side access log itself, a record entirely outside Breslin's own control, and therefore impossible for him to falsify the way he had falsified SentryGuard's internal paperwork, showing his own override code disarming each victim's system at precisely the moment each theft occurred. On April 3, 2024, at 6:50 in the morning, Aurora Police Department burglary unit detectives and a Colorado Bureau of Investigation cybercrime analyst approached Breslin in the driveway of his Aurora home as he loaded equipment into his company van for the day's scheduled installations. Corey Breslin, we need to talk with you about 11 burglaries connected to your installation history, the lead detective said. Breslin set down a toolbox, slowly. You're going to want to be real careful with that accusation. Those manufacturer logs get corrupted all the time. Anybody with basic access could spoof an entry like that. The logs match your personal cell phone's location data for all 11 incidents. His expression hardened slightly, but his voice stayed level, almost lecturing. Cell tower data isn't as precise as people think. You're building a case on technology you clearly don't fully understand. We also have a storage unit with a victim's wedding ring inside it. For the first time, he didn't have an immediate technical explanation ready. He glanced toward his van, then back at the detective, jaw working. Anyone could have rented that unit under a fake name. That doesn't prove it was me. The deposit came from your bank account, Corey. He didn't answer that one. His hands, which had been gesturing confidently through the entire technical argument moments earlier, went still at his sides. I want a lawyer before I explain anything else, he said, his voice noticeably quieter than the confident lecture he'd been giving 30 seconds earlier. He was placed in handcuffs in his own driveway at 6:58 that morning, his company van still half loaded with the exact same equipment he had once carried into 11 homes that trusted him completely. The full sentencing includes a statement from the homeowner who started this whole investigation. Stay for that part, and subscribe if you want more of these every week. Prosecutors in the 18th Judicial District charged Breslin with burglary in the first degree, theft, computer crime, and criminal impersonation of business records. An Arapahoe County grand jury returned the indictment in June 2024. Facing the manufacturer's independent access logs, the falsified work orders, the recovered text messages, and the storage unit evidence, Breslin's attorney attempted to challenge the reliability of the manufacturer's data at a pretrial hearing, an argument the court rejected after the manufacturer's own systems engineer testified to the log's tamper-resistant architecture. Breslin ultimately pleaded guilty to all charges in September 2024, rather than proceed to trial. At sentencing, the homeowner whose March 2024 burglary had first drawn detectives' attention addressed the court. "I paid this company to make my family safer," she said. "I let him into my home because I trusted the badge and the uniform and the friendly conversation. He used every single one of those things to figure out exactly when to come back." The court sentenced Breslin to 16 years in state prison and ordered $340,000 in restitution to the 11 confirmed victims. He was permanently prohibited from holding any occupational license involving home entry, security system installation, or locksmithing anywhere in the state of Colorado. Deputy District Attorney Fatima Nazari, who prosecuted the case, noted that the 16-year sentence reflected not just the dollar value stolen, but the calculated nature of the scheme. Describing Breslin as having engineered patience itself into a weapon, waiting months at a time specifically so no homeowner would ever think to connect a burglary back to a friendly technician who had already come and gone. Sentry Guard Home Security conducted a full audit of every override code programmed by Breslin during his employment, discovering and correcting the 19 additional properties carrying the same tampered credential before any of those homeowners ever became his 12th victim. The company subsequently redesigned its override system so that codes automatically expire and regenerate 90 days after any installation, closing the exact vulnerability Breslin had spent 2 years quietly exploiting. 19 more houses were still holding his key when they finally caught him. The case waiting on the right-hand side proves patience isn't always a virtue. Sometimes it's the whole weapon.